Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something warm, steamy, and just a little absurd. No, not your aunt's spa day in Tuscany. We're going back, way back to ancient Rome, where public bathhouses weren't just for scrubbing your elbows. They were social clubs, gossip centers, napping zones, and, believe it or not, government-sponsored wellness retreats. And one emperor decided that everyone, rich or poor, stinky or slightly less stinky, deserved a little steam-powered silence. He didn't want glory through conquest, he wanted nap equity. Honestly, in a city full of sweaty sandals and chariot traffic, you'd probably do the same. Because let's face it, no one wants to rule an empire that smells like boiled goat. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing how far this sleepy little empire reaches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in a tiled hallway. There's condensation on the walls. Your bare feet slap gently against warm stone. And ahead of you, the subtle scent of pine oil and politics. The thermi await. The first sound is not water, but voices. Low murmurs, the occasional laugh, and a surprisingly aggressive discussion about fig prices. This is no modern spa. There are no scented candles, no meditation playlists, only columns, steam, and the echo of your own slightly reluctant breath. You adjust the thin towel around your waist. Too small, of course. One size never fits all in Rome. As you walk forward, a portly man nods at you from a marble bench. He's wearing sandals, a leafy crown, and the smile of someone who hasn't paid taxes in 6 months. You wonder if that's legal. You keep walking. This is your first visit to the baths of Benequietus, named for the emperor himself. Benequietus the Gentle, Benequietus the Drowsy, Benequietus the surprisingly committed to public sanitation. You remember the posters that went up last month. Clean mind, clean body, clean empire. With a small note at the bottom, new bath tax in effect. Pay promptly. You'd grumbled, of course. Everyone had. But then again, your apartment's plumbing was theoretical, and your neighbor's pet goat had recently decided your doormat was a latrine. So maybe, just maybe, the emperor had a point. You pass through the apoditerium, the changing room, where old men argue about gladiator rankings and olive prices. One is polishing his sandal with lavender butter. Another is telling a story so slow it might not finish before sunset. You nod politely, take your token from the attendant and step into the next chamber. It hits you all at once. Steam. Thick and wet, like breathing through a loaf of fresh bread. The caldarium. Warm, slippery floors. Ceilings arched like the inside of a turtle shell. Walls so slick with moisture they shimmer. You find a quiet bench. Sit. Let the sweat start. Let the noise blur. Let the empire fade to a background murmur. Here in this little corner of engineered humidity, you're just another body in the fog. This place didn't always exist. Not in this form. The emperor changed things. It started with one ridiculous idea. What if we taxed people? So, they could nap? His advisors blinked. The treasurer asked if he'd meant roads or aqueducts or military pay. The emperor had waved a dismissive hand. No, sleep. I want Rome to rest better. Tired people make bad decisions and they smell bad. It was unorthodox, which in Roman government meant will probably happen anyway. Within weeks, a new tax passed. 1 denarius per household, earmarked for bathhouse construction and maintenance. A nap fund, if you will. Historians still debate whether it was brilliant, delusional, or both. But the people, they lined up. You lean back now, letting the heat loosen your shoulders. Someone nearby starts humming a song. A lullaby, maybe. You don't recognize the tune, but your eyes begin to close anyway. A splash. A sigh. The distant clatter of ladles in the frigidarium. You smile. You never thought you'd be grateful for taxes. But here you are, half asleep, half steamed, wholly at peace, and somewhere far across the city, an emperor in a fluffy robe is doing the exact same thing. The thing about Rome, the real Rome, not the postcard one, is that it never stops talking. Even when it bathes, even when it sleeps. Even when it's slipping into a toasty fog of mineral water and eucalyptus steam, it's still buzzing as you let your body melt into the bench, an oddly smooth slab of ancient marble, still warm from the last napper. You listen. The city murmurs through the walls. Someone's sandals squeak, a splash. And then, from just beyond, the archway, the sharp clink of a tax collector's scale. Yes, even here, even now, the Empire's appetite for coins is tireless. You open one eye. Outside the bathhouse, in the busy streets, Rome is far less gentle. Vendors argue about the price of turnips. Children dart between donkeys. A poet is being chased for quoting his own work too loudly. This is what it used to be like, all the time. Before the baths, before the taxes, before Emperor Benequietus declared war on stress. He had noticed one summer that people were crankier than usual. There were more fights at the market, more fruit being thrown. Even the doves looked annoyed. The emperor summoned his court physician, a gaunt man who smelled like garlic and had an impressive collection of skulls. "Why are my citizens so irritable?" he asked, between bites of honeyed figs. "They're tired, your serenity," the physician replied, "and congested. The humidity is stuck in their joints." The emperor paused, then slowly nodded. "Well," he said, "let's unstick them." And just like that, the Bath Reform Act was born. At first it was modest, a tax on goat cheese and lyre strings, revenue redirected toward building small clean pools in each neighborhood. Then came the Nap Decree, an official imperial suggestion that every citizen spend at least 30 minutes a day in gentle bodily repose, preferably in the presence of mist. The decree was written in 6 languages. It had a wax seal shaped like a cloud. People were confused, then curious, then converted. You feel a drop of condensation land on your shoulder. It runs down your skin, warm and slow, like the memory of a lazy afternoon. Inside the bathhouse, the culture is different. People speak in whispers. Even the laughter is soft, like towels being folded. A senator nearby mumbles something about grain subsidies, but his voice is so low it sounds like a lullaby. He's also wearing a cucumber slice on each eyelid. You don't ask. It wasn't always like this. Before the reform, the only place people gathered to unwind was the arena, which wasn't very relaxing, especially if you were the one being chased by a lion. Now, even the lions seem more mellow, probably due to steam exposure, but of course not everyone embraced the tax. The wealthy were skeptical. "Why should we pay," they scoffed, "for peasants to get soggy?" One famously dry senator, Marcellus the Cracked, insisted that steam was a gateway to idleness. To protest, he held his own public event, a series of dry speeches in a sun-baked plaza with no seating, no shade, and no refreshments. Only 3 people came. One fainted. The other 2 joined a bathhouse immediately after. Even today, there's a statue of Marcellus standing just outside the largest thermae. Pigeons gather on his head. He looks furious. He never got over it. Meanwhile, Emperor Benequietus kept expanding his vision. Baths weren't just buildings, they were philosophies. Each one had to meet a list of imperial standards. Temperature must be pleasantly drowsy. Benches must be just hard enough to sit up, just soft enough to lie down. Music, if any, must be played on instruments no louder than a sigh. And staff must smile like they just woke up from the best nap of their lives. Historians still debate whether these were realistic or brilliant, or both. You stretch. The heat loosens something between your ribs. Maybe tension, maybe a regret from that one time you tried to argue with your landlord about rooftop drainage. It doesn't matter here. The steam forgives everything. There's a gentle slosh as someone enters the pool beside you. They give a nod, say nothing. That's bath etiquette. Eye contact allowed, conversation optional, judgment prohibited. You wonder how this idea would go over today. A national bath tax, mandated naps, government-funded napping pods. Actually, and some startups have probably already tried. Still, you can't deny the appeal. A public space not built for consumption but for slowing down. A communal pause button, where even emperors have to wait their turn for the good bench. You remember reading the inscription on the front wall of the bathhouse. To the people of Rome, May your minds be as clear as the waters, and your arguments as short as a nap. It was signed in surprisingly elegant script, Benequietus, Emperor of Steam. A soft chime rings through the bath. It means nothing, or maybe it means everything. Time to move, or time to stay. You're not sure. You close your eyes, you let the warm mist lift your thoughts like laundry on a breeze. And somewhere in the distance, beyond walls and echoes, coins are still clinking into the empire's quietest tax fund. There's something funny about the way Rome decided to change. It didn't roar into progress. It didn't march in with trumpets. It steamed. As you shift to a cooler part of the marble bench, your toes brushing the water's edge, you remember what an older man told you once, somewhere between the hot room and the tepid one. Rome was built on bricks, sure, but it was held together by gossip and warm feet. And it's hard to disagree. Outside the baths, Rome is still chaos. Chariots rattle past loose chickens. Poets argue with fishmongers about meter. There's a man on the corner selling authentic Greek pebbles for foot massage. But in here the world slows. And that was the emperor's plan all along. Benequietus had no desire to be remembered for wars. He wasn't one for bloodshed unless it involved overcooked beets. What he wanted was peace, not the heroic kind, the sleepy kind. So he commissioned a study, yes, really. 3 scholars and 1 particularly calm goat were assigned to walk the streets of Rome and rate the mood. Each day they asked random citizens, "How relaxed are you today?" on a scale from 1 to snoozing. Results were disappointing. One woman threw a cabbage, a gladiator threatened to arm wrestle the survey scroll, and the goat kept eating the data. Still the emperor pressed on. The next move? Standardized bathhouse hours. Not just open all day. No, that would be chaos. Instead, a sacred schedule. From sunrise to mid-morning, elder soak hours. From noon to 2, general steam and storytelling. And from 3 to 4, national nap time. Yes, mandated. Across the city, bells would ring, soft, of course, and citizens were expected to recline wherever they were. At first, people resisted. Nap in public? Said one suspicious cheese vendor. But the decree was clear. Those who resist rest may face gentle reprimands or strongly worded lullabies, and over time, the culture shifted. You recall faintly that your own workplace installed nap benches in the shade. Even the tax office, once a place of grumbling, smelled faintly of lavender and roasted dates. And yes, they still collected your coin. But they gave you a hot towel with it. Not all were convinced, though. The skeptics coined a term, napaganda, accusing the emperor of using sleep to keep the populace docile. They held secret meetings. They wrote scrolls. One even published a play titled The Steam of Tyranny. It bombed. Mostly because halfway through the audience fell asleep. Still, historians today debate, was Benequietus a benevolent visionary, or just a man who really liked hot water? What's known is that he insisted on visiting every bathhouse personally. He'd walk in unannounced, wrapped in an absurdly fluffy robe, and quietly observe. If the steam was too thick, he frowned gently. If the benches were too cold, he sent a note. If someone was snoring too loud, he gave them a medal. Once he caught a general doing push-ups in the caldarium. The emperor just stared at him until the man lay down and meditated instead. You smile at the memory, or maybe at the image of an armored man doing deep breathing. Exercises by candlelight. A servant passes with a tray of herbal tea. You take a cup. It smells like licorice and moss and something else you can't name, probably from Gaul. The tea is warm, slightly bitter. You don't mind. It goes well with the gentle drip-drip of condensation above your head. Next to you, a young scribe scribbles something into a wax tablet. He glances at you. Nap log, he says, tracking duration and volume of communal snoring. You nod solemnly. Research is important. Then he shows you the chart, and you realize he's added a scoring system. Apparently your bench section is currently ranked 3rd in most soothing ambient blend. You try not to let it go to your head. Far across the room, a gentle harp begins to play. No one knows who the harpist is. She just appears. Some say she's a ghost. Others say she's the emperor's cousin. Either way, she plays only one melody. A lullaby titled "Don't Fight the Nap." You begin to lose the edge of the room. Shapes blur, sounds blur. The heat pulls you inward, like soft fabric. You wonder what it must have felt like to live here. Truly, to be taxed, certainly, but in return given the gift of stillness. To know that at any moment you could walk down the street, hand over a few coins, and be wrapped in mist, silence, and warmth. Your eyelids flutter. You sink lower, and somewhere in your drifting thoughts you hear the Emperor's voice whisper, "Let the Empire rest, for it has earned its bath." You wake not all at once, but the way a leaf might drift to the surface of a warm pond. There's no jolt, no alarm, just the slow realization that your toes have gone pleasantly numb and your shoulder has found the exact curve of the stone behind you. Somewhere nearby, someone sighs. A soft, satisfied kind of sigh. The kind that means the nap was good, but the waking is better. You stretch, careful not to splash. The air is still thick, humid, fragrant with rosemary and sandalwood. Somewhere deeper in the bathhouse, someone is telling a story. Slowly, theatrically, with the kind of pauses that invite you to fall asleep mid-sentence. You catch only fragments. And that's why we never store wine near the furnace again. It's unclear if this is a historical tale or a personal mishap. Both are likely in Rome. You decide to wander. You leave the caldarium and step into the tepidarium, the warm room. It's less steamy here. The air moves slightly, stirred by ceiling fans powered by patient, shirtless servants with big palms and small opinions. The benches are dry, the light is golden, and a very old man is humming something that might be a lullaby or a recipe. This, too, is part of the Emperor's grand design. Benequietus had strong opinions about transitions. He believed that going from hot to cold, too quickly, was an act of violence against one's own pores. So every bathhouse was designed with stages, like a carefully curated nap journey. Heat, warmth, chill, stillness, sleep. In the tepidarium, you notice something curious. The walls are covered in mosaics, of course, but not the usual heroic stuff. No battles, no triumphs, just naps. One shows a soldier slumped gently over a basin, helmet tilted like a pillow. Another shows two children curled like commas on a warm tile floor, one holding a fig. A third shows a very bored-looking philosopher dozing with a scroll drooping in his lap. Above them all, in careful Latin script, "Somnus publicus est lux imperii." Public sleep is the light of the empire. You smile. Rome always had a flair for overstatement, but there's something sweet in the sentiment. You settle onto a dry bench and close your eyes. Not to sleep again, not yet, but just to be. To listen. And this is what you hear. The soft flutter of robes as someone walks by. The delicate clink of cups. A sneeze, quickly muffled, followed by an apologetic salve. And the scratching of stylus on wax. That again. You open one eye and see a boy at maybe 12, scribbling furiously onto a tablet. He's wearing an official-looking sash, much too big for his frame. He notices you noticing him. "I'm the nap clerk," he says with pride. You nod, as if that clears everything up. He beams, tracking nap patterns across social classes. It's an imperial initiative. We're trying to determine if fishmongers nap deeper than poets. You raise an eyebrow. "Early signs say yes," he whispers. "Fishmongers sleep like marble. Poets toss." You make a mental note to start selling fish. The boy scampers off, tablet under arm. You hear him mutter something about control groups and blankets per capita. You remain seated, amused, but also charmed. There's something wonderful about a society that treats sleep like a civic duty. Of course, not everyone napped. Equally. There had been, you recall, the Great Pillow debate, a heated session in the Senate, where statesmen argued over whether public pillows should be provided in the baths. Some believed it was essential to proper rest. Others feared head lice. One senator famously declared, "Rome shall crumble the day a man needs government-issued fluff beneath his neck." He later slipped during a nap and had to wear a neck brace made of fig leaves. He changed his vote. Eventually, pillows were approved, filled with goose feathers, lavender, and imperial dignity. You lean your head back now onto one of those very pillows. It sighs under you. Or maybe you sigh. Hard to tell. Historians still argue over whether this bath tax era was progressive governance or an elaborate excuse to not do anything. But even the critics agree. It worked. Crime went down. Smiles went up. And for the first time, in Roman history, someone actually enjoyed going to a government building. You remember passing the Ministry of Moisture once. Its motto carved in stone. If it isn't soft, we're not funding it. There was even a new political faction formed. During this time, the Somnocrats. Their platform, nap rights for all. Their symbol, a turtle wrapped in a blanket. They never won any elections. But they always showed up well rested. Your thoughts begin to blur again. You catch yourself tracing patterns in the mosaic with your toe. A spiral here, a fig leaf there. You feel like one of them. A peaceful blur in someone else's picture, and, honestly, it feels okay. You close your eyes again. Not to sleep this time, just to let your mind steam. And in that drifting space between thought and dream, you imagine the Emperor somewhere not far from here, in a private chamber of marble and velvet, snoring gently while someone reads him poetry about rain. Because in this Rome sleep is sacred, and your taxes paid for it. There's a kind of quiet that only exists in places built for slowness, and the baths of Benequietus were nothing if not temples to deliberate inactivity. You walk now, slowly, into the next chamber, the frigidarium, the cool room. The air changes instantly, not cold exactly, but brisk enough to wake your skin gently, like a breeze through linen curtains on a lazy spring afternoon. The frigidarium was designed to bring you back, not sharply, but kindly. The marble here is paler, the light bluer, filtered through. High slats in the ceiling. You pass a fountain where water flows with the sound of someone whispering a long, polite secret. A few bathers rest against the walls, their cheeks flushed from heat, their expressions somewhere between dazed and philosophical, and there, at the far end, is something unusual. A scroll kiosk, yes. A place where bathers borrow scrolls. There's no checkout, no fees, just a stern old woman who watches you like she's seen 1,000 wet scrolls ruined by careless fingers. You nod to her. She nods back. Trust has been established. You take a scroll at random as it smells faintly of chamomile and unroll it just enough to read the title, On the Merits of Doing Less More Often. A classic. The scroll opens with a quote from Benequietus himself. An empire is only as strong as its naps are long. You sit down on a dry bench, cool against your legs. Across from you, a pair of twins are playing a game that involves flicking. Olive pits into a shallow bowl of scented water. They cheer, then fall silent again as if remembering where they are. This is not a place for excitement. It's a place for settling. Your mind drifts again, back to the first time you heard of the Emperor's strange tax. You'd laughed at first. Everyone did. A tax for baths, for naps. What was next? A tariff on hugs? But then, it worked. The first bathhouse had opened in the rougher quarter of the city, where shouting was the default mode of communication, and sleep was something you did with one eye open. At first, people were suspicious. They dipped a toe, they sniffed the water, then they sat, then they sighed, then they napped, and the change was immediate. One woman, known for her skill in public arguments, suddenly took up gardening. A man who'd been banned from 3 taverns for dramatic poetry readings started writing in lowercase. The local magistrate reported fewer disputes. People arrive angry, he said, but by the time they've had a steam, a scrub and a slice of melon, they forget what the argument was about. Even crime shifted. There was a thief who used to rob fruit stalls. After a week of daily baths, he began returning the pears with little notes. Sorry, the steam made me rethink my life. Of course, not everyone reformed, but even the difficult ones became slower. One famous scoundrel was caught mid-theft simply because he paused for a foot soak. You smile at the thought, and here in the frigidarium, that same slow pace wraps around you like a sheet left out in the early morning. Nearby, a woman reads aloud from her scroll. It's a poem, you think, though her voice is barely above a breath. Something about clouds and teacups, and someone falling asleep during a speech and dreaming of better speeches. You look around. Every face here is soft at the edges, no clenched. Jaws, no furrowed brows. Even the guards stationed at the doors are leaning casually on their spears, occasionally exchanging quiet commentary on the merits of oat milk foot scrubs. You glance up and notice, carved into the stone arch overhead, another imperial motto: "If the people are tired, the empire will trip." Not exactly poetic, but accurate. Historians still debate whether this bath-centered governance was sustainable. Some say it softened Rome, others say it saved it. There's evidence that Benequietus reviewed every city report with a column labeled "Average Daily Yawns," and when the number dropped too low, he ordered more fountains. In the emperor's mind, a good bathhouse could prevent a revolution, because no one sharpens a sword when they're elbow-deep in eucalyptus water. You remember once overhearing a group of senators debating whether bath attendants should be counted in the census. The proposal passed narrowly, only because someone fell asleep during the vote. Even now, decades later, every census scroll ends with the same question: do you prefer lavender or lemon balm? You chuckle quietly, then your eyes drift toward a shelf of tiny bottles near the wall. A plaque reads, "Citizen Suggestions, Aromatic Trials." Apparently, this week's experimental scent is Cucumber Mint Moss, Spring Edition. You breathe in. It's weirdly refreshing, like drinking tea with a frog. Not unpleasant, just unexpected. A bell chimes in the distance. You're not sure what it means. Maybe nothing, or maybe it's time for the next room. But you don't move yet. You sit. You breathe. You listen to the faint splash of someone dipping a toe, to the rustle of a scroll being turned, to the quiet hum of an empire that, for once, decided to slow down on purpose. And you think, maybe that's the real power of Rome. Not its legions, not its architecture, but its willingness to invest in rest. You rise again slowly. Not because you have somewhere to be, but because your skin tells you it's time. The frigidarium has cooled you just enough to sharpen the edges of your thoughts, but not so much as to return you to full consciousness. Just gently nudged you out of the fog. You wrap your towel a little tighter. It's grown pleasantly damp, like bread that's forgotten it was once crusty. And you step into a long corridor lit by high windows and low lanterns. This, as you now recall, is the corridor of reflection. It wasn't always called that. Originally it had no name, just a hallway between rooms, a place for wet feet to squeak on stone and people to awkwardly avoid eye contact after particularly loud stomach gurgles. But one day, as the story goes, Emperor Benequietus walked this very hallway barefoot, holding a bowl of grapes. He stopped halfway through, looked at a mural of ducks in flight and whispered, That was it. Just, And from that moment on, the corridor was dubbed the Hall of Reflection, because apparently when emperors say, history listens. You walk slowly now past murals of birds, of rivers, of one suspiciously realistic chicken. Each painted tile tells a quiet story. Nothing dramatic, just moments. A boy watching clouds, a woman pouring tea for a cat, a man asleep on a bench, his scroll drifting gently into a pond. You pause before one that shows a baker resting his head on a flour sack, a small smile on his lips surrounded by loaves. It's titled 10 Minutes Before the Dough Rose. Rome, you realize, recorded not just its wars, but its naps. And perhaps that's why it lasted as long as it did. Up ahead, there's a doorway, draped with linen, not velvet, not silk, simple, soft, and slightly frayed at the bottom. You push through and step into what the emperor once called the heart room. No one's quite sure why. It isn't shaped like a heart, it doesn't beat, but it feels like something central, something that holds the place together, even as steam and silence do their work elsewhere. This room is dim, not dark, just wrapped in perpetual evening, the kind of light you might find just after dusk. When the sky hasn't decided what color it wants to be, there are cushions, endless cushions, thrown about like soft punctuation marks scattered without plan, but perfectly placed. People are sprawled here, not asleep, not awake. Some are staring at the ceiling, some are whispering, some are simply breathing like they mean it. In the center is a fountain, but instead of water it bubbles with warm milk infused with honey and fig. A scent so gentle you almost don't notice it, until you realize your shoulders just relaxed. You find a cushion, not too close to anyone else. It makes a satisfying shumph sound as you settle in, like a sigh from a pillow that's been waiting just for you. This is where people go when they've steamed, soaked, cooled, and still don't want to leave, when they need one more moment, or 10, before returning to the noise of carts, coins, and Cousin Arthur's shouting about eel prices. Here, no one speaks unless the sentence begins with, "Do you mind if I whisper something?" And even then it must be relevant, calming, and ideally involve herbal recipes or daydreams about flying fish. Someone nearby mutters softly, "I once napped so well in here I forgot my own birthday." No one responds. They just smile, eyes closed. Respect. You lean back. Your head finds the perfect crease in the cushion. The fabric is linen, worn smooth by years of gentle sculls. And you feel, again, the strange comfort of civic softness. This was, after all, the Emperor's plan. He'd once said during a rare public speech, "The strength of an empire lies not only in its walls or weapons, but in the softness of its cushions and the permission to use them." People laughed, but then they sat and then they nodded because somehow it was true. The heart room became a place not for thoughts but for afterthoughts, the gentle echoes of thinking, where ideas weren't formed but softened, melted like wax under a slow flame. Historians argue about the purpose of the room. Some call it a psychological triumph, a space for emotional rebalancing. Others call it a public indulgence, a taxpayer-funded nap fort. A few, even now, say it was simply a clever distraction to keep people from noticing how boring imperial budgets were, but none deny its popularity. You once heard a senator claim, "I wrote my best speech here, and I wasn't even conscious." You glance toward the fountain again. Someone has dropped a small flower into the warm milk. It spins slowly, like the minute hand of a sleepy clock. You close your eyes. You don't plan to sleep. But the air here is heavy with intent. And in that softened world between waking and drifting, you remember the Emperor's motto carved into the arch before you entered. You pay your taxes. You earn your stillness. You smile. It's not the worst trade you've ever made. Eventually, someone rings a small chime, a single note that barely rises above the sound of breath. It's not an order. It's a suggestion, a gentle nudge that maybe, just maybe, you might want to stand again. You do, stretching slowly. Your back releases a series of satisfying creaks, like the opening of a well-used scroll. No one claps. But one old man nearby gives you a knowing nod. In this place, that's basically a standing ovation. You pad softly out of the heart room, the cushion sighing behind you, and return to the corridor, now dimmer, cooler, quieter. It's the lull between peak bathing hours, the time of steam walkers, people who drift the halls with no particular destination, just letting their damp skin guide their steps like sleepy weather vanes. As you wander, you notice a sign you hadn't seen before. It's small, bronze, and very polite. It reads, "Experimental Wing, Authorized Drifters Welcome." You are, without question, an authorized drifter now. You push open the door. Inside is a low, curved hallway lit by floating oil lamps. The walls are lined with niches, small alcoves where bathers sit alone or in pairs, each with a different feature. A shallow foot pool here, a gentle breeze source there. One alcove is filled entirely with soft moss. This is what Emperor Benequietus called the spa of unnecessary delights. It was controversial. When he first proposed it, some senators protested, "Why fund lavender foot fog when our roads have potholes?" To which the Emperor famously replied, "Because no one dreams of roads." The spa was created for experimentation, to push the boundaries of comfort and slowness. It was a place where therapists tested steam infused with plum blossoms, where people lay on warm sand while poets whispered recipes in hexameter. You take a seat in one of the empty alcoves. This one has a basin of warm pebbles. Not water, pebbles. At first you scoff internally, but then you slide your feet in. And, oh no, this is incredible. The warmth wraps your soles, presses gently between your toes, like someone massaging your stress away using the method of gentle geology. You tilt your head back and stare at the ceiling, painted with stars. Swirling constellations you vaguely recognize from the time someone tried to teach you astronomy and you accidentally fell asleep halfway through Orion's belt, which, to be fair, was kind of on theme. Here, you are alone, but not lonely. This room has the quiet hum of contentment, the kind you usually only get from sitting under a tree with nothing in your hands and nowhere to be. A small sign beside your seat offers insight. Estimated nap length in this pod, 17 minutes 22 seconds. Someone definitely tested that, probably several times. It's here amidst the silence and warm rocks that your mind begins to drift to the reason behind all this. Why baths? Why naps? Why fund an empire's stillness? Benequietus had an answer. It's recorded on a stone tablet near the Senate. A city that never rests will one day forget how. And he was right. Before the bath tax, people rushed, sprinted, collapsed. Now they float. You've seen it. Bakers take breaks in steam tents. Farmers schedule their planting around nap hours. Even messengers deliver scrolls by hand. Then immediately, you sit down for a foot soak. At first, businesses complained. Productivity dipped, deadlines were missed, but then something strange happened. Creativity soared. Arguments resolved faster. No one punched anyone in a marketplace for a full week. That in Rome was a miracle. You slide your feet deeper into the pebbles. Somewhere in the next alcove, a man is softly reciting a haiku about boiled pears. You approve. Eventually, you stand. Again, slowly as always, and pass through a curtain into the aromatic chamber. Oh, this is different. The air is thick with fragrance, not cloying, not perfumed, but layered, like a bouquet left in the rain, then sun-dried on marble. Lavender. Bay leaf, maybe orange blossom? An attendant bows and hands you a small pouch. You peek inside. Aroma taxes. It's a new initiative, voluntary, of course. You choose your scent, you pay a coin, and the funds go toward planting more herbs in the city. You pick sleepy time, drop a denarius into the dish, and wave the pouch under your nose. You immediately forget the day of the week, another success. These taxes were never mandatory, but somehow almost everyone paid. Because they wanted the baths, they believed in them. In a city where so much was taken, rent, attention, shoes, this was something gently given, and that changes things. As you sit again, your mind slips into a fog not from steam but from understanding. You were taxed, yes, but not for punishment, not for control. You were taxed so you could rest, so you could nap in a bath and feel for a moment entirely human. And in the world of emperors and empires, that might be the most radical act of all. The aromatic chamber leaves its signature on you, not in perfume exactly, but in mood. You carry the time-scented calm like a cloak as you drift onward, passing again through the linen curtains into a sun-dappled corridor. You notice that your feet no longer make sound. Even the air somehow walks quieter here, and then you hear it. Laughter. Soft, rolling, sleepy laughter, like someone telling a joke underwater. You follow the sound and find yourself standing at the entrance of a room you didn't expect to see here. The Frivolium. Yes, that's its name. Carved above the arched doorway in swirly letters, and underneath, a phrase you've heard whispered in the steam. Because even nap people deserve a giggle. Inside, it's not what you'd imagine from a place in the imperial bath complex. No grand fountains, no polished marble columns, no fragrant steam or tax-funded tiles. Instead, it's cozy. Worn cushions, low stools, baskets full of odd things. Feathers, pebbles, small sticks carved like angry philosophers. One wall is covered entirely in poetry written backward. Another is a gallery of badly drawn emperors, one of which might be a pineapple. A sign near the door reads, "All items in this room are pointless. Enjoy responsibly." You smile. In the center of the room, a group is gathered in a slow-motion game of towel toss. It involves two people, one folded towel and an agreement not to try very hard. Points are awarded for gentleness, creativity, and how well the towel lands in someone's lap without waking them up. An elderly man with a beard like tangled yarn is the reigning champion. He wins today's round with a toss so delicate it could be mistaken for gravity just giving up. You take a seat near the edge, careful not to startle a group napping mid-conversation. The frivolium was another of Benequietus's stranger ideas. He believed, might and frequently said, laughter before sleep softens the soul. It was part of his larger doctrine of intentional drowsiness. He believed that sleep should be prepared for, not just stumbled into, but curated like a fine meal or a poorly attended Senate meeting, and so he created 3 pre-nap protocols: steam the mind, gentle thoughts, no debates, avoid the topic of inheritance disputes, frivolity light, mild play, non-competitive games, light-hearted poetry, feather zone, literal feathers if possible, symbolic ones otherwise. Many scoffed. The military hated it. Laughter weakens the soldier's edge, they claimed. 2, which Benequietus replied, no one is attacking Rome during nap hour. Hard to argue. Besides, the bathhouses had become so popular that even generals began appearing, disguised of course, wearing simple togas and carrying scrolls titled Strategies for Strategic Soaking. You glance to your left. Someone is sketching a cartoon of a senator, trying to give a speech while sliding slowly into a mud puddle. It's labeled, The Fall of the Republic, literally. It's funny. You snort. A tiny one, but it counts. Nearby, a woman is building a tower of warm towels, each one folded just so. When she reaches 12, someone applauds. Very softly, of course. This room may be pointless, but it's not purposeless. Even here, where everything is silly, there's a kind of reverence for rest, for release, for the idea that joy, too, can be gentle. You remember a law passed quietly a few months after the bath tax. No citizen shall be made to feel guilty for enjoying unproductive softness. It was signed in purple ink. Some say Benequietus used grape juice. Some say he used tears from a poet who finally learned to relax. No one's sure. It passed unanimously. Of course, the frivolium has had its critics. One scroll circulated claiming the room was an assault on Roman values of seriousness and sandals. It was authored anonymously. But the handwriting looked suspiciously like Senator Rutilius, a known nap skeptic and part-time fun hater. The scroll was posted outside the frivolium for a week as decoration. Someone later turned it into a paper hat. You stay longer than you meant to. You don't do much. You watch a man balance a spoon on his forehead. You help someone rhyme cabbage with savage. You sketch a picture of a centurion giving a pigeon a tiny shield. It's dumb, it's perfect. Eventually the chime sounds again, the same soft ding you're starting to associate with transitions you don't resent. You stand. The laughter fades behind you like fog curling around a corner, and as you walk back into the quieter halls, your shoulders looser and your grin soft-edged, you realize something deeply Roman and deeply true. Not every tax has to hurt. Some taxes buy laughter, some buy silence, and some buy the freedom to toss a towel just right and feel, if only for a moment, completely, gloriously unimportant. You wander back through the corridor now, carrying the residual warmth of laughter like steam tucked beneath your skin. The marble beneath your feet has cooled, just slightly, and the light has shifted. A little more golden, a little more like late afternoon. You've lost track of time, which in the baths of Benequietus is both expected and encouraged. There's a hallway you haven't noticed before. It bends slightly, curves downward. The air is quieter here, thicker. Not just warm, but heavy in that soothing way that makes your eyes feel heavier just from being open. At the end of the hallway, you see a wide doorway with a carved stone arch. Above it, the whispering vault. Below that, in smaller script, please enter slowly. Your dreams are already inside. You obey. The room is dim, lit only by tall candles and tiny bowls of glowing coals placed along the walls. No lanterns, no flames that flicker, just steady warmth, like an old memory that refuses to fade. There are no benches here, just long, soft platforms barely raised from the floor, covered in thick cloth. People lie on them draped in light blankets. They are not sleeping. They are listening to whispers. The whispering vault is one of the bathhouse's quietest spaces, and strangely, one of its most popular. It was inspired by something Benequietus witnessed as a child. His mother, reading aloud to herself in the garden. Not for anyone else, not to teach or convince, just to speak softly because it felt good. He carried that with him. And years later, when constructing his public bath reforms, he insisted that every major complex include a vault where voices must be softer than steam. Here, trained whisperers, yes, a real position, recite stories to whoever is listening, not dramatic tales of war and glory, but slow, wandering stories of everyday life, a baker's dream, the internal thoughts of a pigeon, a long, overly descriptive ode to figs. You settle onto an open platform. A whisperer is already speaking. You catch only a fragment. And then, the shoemaker realized the left sandal had feelings, not strong ones, but definite preferences. Their voice doesn't pierce the room, it folds into it, like warm honey on a spoon. Across the room, another whisperer is recounting the history of Roman spoons in exquisite, unnecessary detail. You close your eyes, you listen. You remember learning that whispering in ancient Rome was once seen as suspicious. A secret shared quietly might be a conspiracy. A whisper in the forum could start a riot. But here, whispers are sacred. They are offered, not hidden, a shared softness. Say a bond of breath. Some say the whispering vault began as a joke, an over-designed room where someone accidentally mumbled too close to a vent. Others claim the acoustics were intentional, designed to amplify the unimportant. Whatever the origin, the effect is undeniable. You feel yourself drawn downward, not asleep, not fully, just unanchored. The whisper shifts again. This time it's a list of vegetables ranked by personality. Beets, the voice says softly, are overly dramatic. Carrots want to help but are always late. Lettuce has anxiety. You smile, no one laughs aloud here, that would be disruptive. But everyone smiles the same way, quietly, inwardly, the way a cat might if it suddenly understood tax reform. You learn later that the emperor himself once whispered in this very room. Not officially. He wasn't introduced. He just wandered in one day, removed his sandals, and began reciting his dreams of building a bathhouse made entirely of cloud. It was, according to rumor, the most soothing nonsense ever heard. Some people napped for 3 days straight. One person still insists they smelled actual sky. You shift slightly on your platform. The cloth is warm but not hot. The room hums with breath and stories. You could stay here forever. And some do. Not permanently, of course, but long enough to forget what they came in stressed about. Long enough for whispered fig facts to overwrite debt worries. Long enough to let go. You glance at the nearest wall. Inscribed in faint ink is a line you hadn't noticed before. Truth spoken loudly is a debate. Truth whispered is a gift. You don't remember who said it. Maybe no one. Maybe it was. Always there, your eyelids begin to fall again, not out of exhaustion, but invitation. And just before your mind drifts completely, you hear the whisperer say, "And that's why the emperor always carried a feather, not to write with, just to remind himself that softness can be powerful too." When you finally emerge from the whispering vault, it's as if you've surfaced from beneath a warm, slow-moving river. The world feels quieter now, not because the noise has stopped, but because you've changed how you listen. You walk softer, breathe deeper. Even the flickering torchlight in the corridor seems gentler, less urgent somehow. You drift for a while. Time has become syrup in your thoughts, until you reach a familiar, yet somehow forgotten space. A wide, open room, cooled stone underfoot. Scattered chairs, each tilted at an inviting angle. This is the napatorium. Yes, that's what it's called. An official term. Coined, debated, and ratified by the Senate with exactly 3 objections, all of which were sleepily withdrawn, halfway. So through the hearing. This was the emperor's proudest experiment. A state-funded nap hall. Open to all. No appointment required. No questions asked. No snoring judged. You take a seat near a wall, where a window frames a view of clouds rolling over rooftops. The air here smells faintly of almond, dry parchment, and the kind of wool you imagine philosophers wear on laundry day. It's quiet but not silent, the kind of quiet that allows for blankets being adjusted, for a yawn 2 cushions over, for a feather drifting inexplicably across the floor. Above you, a fresco fills. The ceiling, not gods, not battles, but people. Napping, all kinds. A centurion with his helmet covering his face. A baker curled beside a basket of imaginary loaves. A senator still holding a speech scroll, slack-jawed in mid-dream. At the center of the painting is a golden sun, with closed eyes and a gentle smirk. Its rays are pillows, its aura absolute serenity. Benequietus himself had insisted this fresco be painted. He called it the Sleep of Nations. He claimed that if Rome could give its citizens 10 minutes of uninterrupted rest each day, the empire would last 1,000 years longer. He was wrong, of course. Rome fell, eventually. But for a while, it dozed beautifully. You stretch your legs and notice a soft rustle beside you. An attendant appears, silent, sock-footed, carrying a tray of eye masks. You take one. It's made of cloth so light you question whether it's even real. Possibly vapor, possibly the concept of comfort, made tangible. The attendant gives you a knowing smile and disappears without a sound. You settle in. The chair reclines. Not mechanically, but by instinct, as if sensing the precise moment your spine gives permission. As you adjust the mask over your face, a gentle voice somewhere near the far wall begins to hum. Not a melody, just sound. Warm, human, and entirely non-lyrical. A lullaby composed of vowel sounds and good intentions. The hum is one of many tools employed here in the napatorium. Others include the weighted sheet option, for those who like their comfort with a sense of mild responsibility. The sandal-off policy, no footwear, no exceptions. The pillow exchange program, bring a dream, take a dream, no questions asked. In a city known for ambition, noise, and philosophy shouted from balconies, this room is a miracle. Even the pigeons outside coo more quietly near this window. They know. There's a long-standing theory, mostly among poets, that the napatorium is located at a natural convergence point of soft wind currents and forgiving sunlight. They call it the lull center. Scientists, of course, disagree. They claim the room's restful nature is due to thoughtful architecture, thermal regulation, and sensory conditioning. But the truth is, no one naps quite as well anywhere else. Even the emperor used to sneak in. Disguised, naturally, robed slightly. Plainer, crown replaced by a floppy towel hat. He'd pick a random chair. Sit. Melt. Once, a young boy whispered to his mother, "That man snores like a wise lion." No one corrected him. The emperor reportedly called the napatorium his favorite law, not his most strategic, not his most praised, just his favorite. And so, here you are, wrapped in soft air, listening to someone dream aloud in the next chair, something about floating orchards and musical spoons. Your body loosens its grip on wakefulness. You forget your errands, your deadlines. That one strange itch on your left knee from earlier, all of it dissolves. You think maybe of how strange this would sound to someone far away. A public nap chamber, funded by taxes, staffed with soft-footed attendants and blanketed in candlelight. Unthinkable in most worlds. But here it's as natural as breathing, as necessary as bread, as Roman as sandals and civic debate. There's a plaque above the door you missed on the way in. You see it now, carved in wood. Here, your thoughts may wander, your feet may rest, your burdens may briefly forget your name. You pull the mask down. The fabric cools your brow, and slowly, softly, you give in. You don't remember falling asleep, but you remember waking. Which is strange because it doesn't feel like waking at all. It feels like floating upward through a warm mist, your mind bobbing gently like a fig in honeyed tea. No alarm, no abrupt voices, just a shift in the quality of stillness around you. The hum has stopped, and now there's music. Not the kind you'd hear at a banquet or in a courtyard echoing off marble. This is slower, older, a kind of humming through fingers music, played on an instrument you can't quite place, half flute, half breeze. You stretch reluctantly. The chair exhales beneath you, returning to upright like it's giving you one last hug before letting go. You stand. Your limbs feel soft, your thoughts even softer. As you leave the napatorium, the door opens onto a quiet passageway lined with miniature columns and, unexpectedly, ferns. Real ones, not mosaics. Someone waters them daily, probably with intention, maybe with poetry. And then you see it, a modest archway carved with one word, Silentium. This is the Emperor's newest initiative, the Silence Annex. Constructed in the final years of his reign, when his obsession with softness began to evolve into an admiration for absence. Benequietus had written in a private letter, later found under his pillow, "Noise has its place, but silence is the final luxury." The Silentium is exactly what it promises, a space of no words, no footsteps, no splashes, scrolls or whispering. Here even the architecture speaks in lowercase. You remove your sandals as instructed. A mat of woven grass greets your feet. The ceiling arches overhead in perfect soft curves. No sharp corners, no echoing domes. Just softness. Always softness. There are seats in here, but not many. And none are the same. Each one is shaped for a different posture. Reclining, curled, stretched, folded. You choose one that allows your legs to go just slightly numb. Perfect. No one makes eye contact here. Not out of rudeness, but reverence. This is a sacred pause. Occasionally, a soft bell chimes in another room. But not here. The Silentium has its own rhythm, one determined by breath, by heartbeat, by the slight rustle of someone adjusting their robe with reverent slowness. On the wall to your right, there is no art, only texture, woven cloth, wool, maybe reeds, designed not to be, looked at but felt by air. Historians debate the purpose of this room. Some believe it was meant to cleanse the mind after a nap. Others think it was built to remind citizens that not every moment needs filling. One scroll suggests Benequietus created it after spending 3 hours trapped in a Senate hearing about the correct angle of public benches. He emerged, blinking, and frazzled, and declared, "We need a room with absolutely no opinions." And so the Silentium was born. It has no plaque, no fountain, no motto etched in gold. Just a single strip of linen hung near the door, where someone, perhaps a visitor, perhaps the Emperor himself, has stitched a simple line of thread. Let the silence finish what your thoughts began. You sit longer than you intended. Time is getting irrelevant. Even memory loosens here. You begin to forget what came before, frivolity, warmth, towel games. Not because they don't matter, but because they've done their job. Now your breath sounds like someone else's, and your heartbeat becomes a gentle percussion in an orchestra of stillness. Somewhere nearby, a man folds a piece of paper so slowly you can hear the creases settle into the fibers. Another guest draws soft shapes into the condensation on the wall, letters that don't form words. No one looks, that's not the point. You feel something soften in your chest, a knot you didn't know you were holding. It loosens now, not with a crack, but with a sigh. It's here in this room that you realize something small but steady. Benequietus wasn't just building bathhouses. He was redesigning the emotional architecture of Rome. Where other emperors built monuments to be seen, he built spaces to disappear into. Where others gave their names to roads, he gave his to silence. There's no tax to enter the Silentium, no token. No toll. The only price is the one you're willing to pay, a moment of surrender. An admission that you don't need to say anything, that not every thought is a soldier marching toward a point, that some can just sit and breathe and fade. Gently into marble. You close your eyes once more, not to sleep, but to let the silence shape you, and for the first time in days, maybe weeks, you hear nothing and realize it is enough. When you finally step out of the Silentium, even the sound of your own feet feels intrusive. You tread carefully, as if you've returned from some place sacred, somewhere words are too loud and thoughts need to whisper. Outside, the light has changed. Not quite dusk, not quite afternoon. That strange in-between gold that makes everything feel like it's being remembered in real time. You walk quietly, letting your eyes adjust, and find yourself at a doorway labeled simply, "The Registry of Stillness." That's new. You've heard whispers but never found it before. A room rumored to be more metaphor than real estate. You enter. It's smaller than you expected. No grand arches, no steam, just walls lined with tiny drawers, hundreds, maybe thousands, each with a nameplate and a date. A clerk looks up from a desk. She doesn't speak. She simply nods toward an open book. It rests on a low pedestal, its pages wide and soft, each line written in precise, drowsy script. You approach and realize what it is. A log of naps. Thousands of them. Each entry records the napper's name, if given, the time, the room, and a brief comment, Marcus Tullius Tepidarium. Dreamed I was a loaf of bread. It was peaceful. Unknown citizen. Whispering vault. Could hear my mother's voice even though she's been gone a long while. Sabina. Frivolium. Laughed myself to sleep. Woke up to someone drawing a duck on my foot. It's all here. Not censored. Not cleaned up. Just recorded with care and light ink. This is where the Empire tracks its softness. You flip to the current page. The latest entry simply reads, "You Section 12, still napping in your mind." You blink. The ink isn't dry yet. You look toward the clerk. She smiles faintly, like someone who's seen 100,000 entries and is still delighted when a new one arrives. You sign your name. Or maybe just a symbol, a line, a leaf. Whatever it is, it joins the chorus of peaceful forgettings in this book. Because here, naps aren't just events, they're artifacts. Historians, centuries later, will read this registry and debate whether this was an actual government function or a beautifully absurd performance piece. Some will call it nap bureaucracy, others the soft archives. But the truth is simpler. This was the Emperor's way of saying, yes, I saw you rest and it mattered. You exit the registry and step into a courtyard. The air is open again now, birds overhead, the scent of jasmine and freshly scrubbed tile. And in the center of the courtyard is the statue. You've heard about it. Most people assume it would be of Benequietus, perhaps reclining with a towel over one eye. But no. It's just a man. Any man. Sitting cross-legged on a bench. Head tilted, back eyes closed. The plaque reads, "The citizen at rest dedicated to all who paused." There's a cushion beside the statue. You sit, you don't say anything. You don't even sigh. But you notice the way your breath slows, how your shoulders settle, how the sound of the city seems to hush itself just a bit in your presence. It's in this courtyard that the Emperor would often end his own visits to, the bathhouses. He'd sit beside the statue, incognito or not, eating a fig or sipping tea brewed so lightly it tasted like a dream someone else once had. No guards, no scrolls, no decrees, just breath and brick. And stillness. There's a rumor, never confirmed, that the Emperor once fell asleep here and dreamed of a city with no clocks, where the only schedule was when your soul tells you it's time. The Senate rejected the proposal, but the bathhouses built a sundial shaped like a yawning face anyway. Out of respect, you lean back against the warm stone. The light fades just a little more. A breeze picks up, carrying the scent of mint perhaps, or just memory. You wonder briefly what someone in the future might think, reading your name in the registry of stillness. Will they laugh? Will they envy? Or will they too feel the pull? To sit, to soften, to stop. And in that moment, as your eyelids drift low again, you feel it. Not pride, not accomplishment, but recognition. You are part of something now, not a movement, not a law, but a culture of pause. And whether you paid your tax or simply wandered in by accident, you have become what Benequietus always hoped his people would be, soft in spirit, still in breath, and exactly where they need to be. You remain on the bench beside the statue longer than you planned, maybe longer than you realized. Time in the bathhouse doesn't tick, it drifts. And you, dear citizen, are now floating fully in the rhythm of the Empire's slowest institution. Eventually, someone walks past you, an attendant perhaps, though they wear no uniform. They pause, place a warm linen wrap gently across your shoulders, then move on without a word. This is the RAP service, a public benefit created after a city-wide survey revealed that 87% of bathers agreed. Post-nap chills are real and rude. You pull the cloth around you. It smells faintly of almond and afternoon sun. And with that you rise again, not urgently, not because you must, but because you're curious. You follow the cobbled path along a low wall covered in ivy, past quiet alcoves and half-hidden fountains, until you find a sign. The Department of Damp Affairs. It is perhaps the strangest name you've seen all day, which is saying something. Inside is a small domed room filled with scrolls, charts, and quietly murmuring civil servants. A brass plaque explains, tasked with overseeing all moisture, levels, towel distributions, steam quality control, and nap scheduling across the greater Roman bath network. Of course, this is where the Empire's bath data lives. You approach a scroll labeled Annual Report on Steam Thickness by District. Yes, they measured that apparently steam in the eastern sectors was 3.2% denser than in the west. Citizens there reported slightly more immersive fog dreams as a result. A map nearby shows zones of ideal napping light, determined by angle of sunlight, cloud behavior, and foot traffic noise. And beside it, a chart titled Most Popular. Bathhouse ambient sounds ranked by soothingness. The winner for 3 years running? Distant ladle clinking, muffled, followed by towel folding at low volume. You're not sure whether to laugh or bow. So you do neither. You just appreciate. The clerk behind the main desk notices you. She smiles and motions you over. She slides a small scroll toward you. You unroll it and find yourself, or rather, your visit. A personal nap log. Time of arrival. Number of size noted, preferred temperature. Most likely favorite room, calculated by towel linger time. The precision is unnerving, but comforting. You whisper, how? She just winks and points at a small bronze plaque on the wall that reads, Everyone matters, especially the quiet ones. You sign your scroll and hand it back. She tucks it into a drawer labeled Contented. C. You exit the Department of Damp Affairs feeling oddly seen. Outside, the wind has picked up ever so slightly, enough to make the leaves on the fig trees tremble like polite applause. You walk further down the path, following the signs etched. Into tile, to the Library of Gentle Facts. A few turns later you arrive. It's not grand, no pillars, no giant owl statues, just rows and rows of scrolls, each one carefully categorized under headings like unimportant but lovely, too boring for the Senate, just right for us facts that might help you. Sleep, you pull one at random. A concise history. 5 Roman socks. It begins. The Romans invented socks out of necessity, but they wore them out of longing. You are against all logic, fascinated. Another scroll details every fruit sold in markets on odd-numbered days. You learn that plums were banned on Wednesdays in one district due to a vendor dispute that ended in mild poetry combat. Each scroll is written in slow script, meant to be read aloud. Some include nap cues. Others have soft illustrations, figs wearing sunglasses, clouds doing yoga, a senator asleep at his desk labeled Before Reform. You stay longer than expected. You read about the Guild of Warm Stones who lobbied successfully for stone benches to be preheated for all public speeches. You learn that Emperor Benequietus once tried to create a position called Minister of Moist Emotions to track the nation's tears and measure emotional wellness via foot temperature. The Senate denied the motion. He built the position anyway. Its office now resides in a converted towel closet. You set down the scroll and lean back in your chair, which creaks with the sound of someone sighing into retirement. A bell chimes outside. Dusk, maybe. Or just someone ringing a bell to appreciate. The acoustics. Either way, you know this day is not done, not yet. But you are deeper now, not just in the bathhouse, but in the idea of it. The philosophy of pause. The quiet elegance of engineered calm. Benequietus once said, Rome shall be remembered not only by what it built, but by the moments in which it chose not to build. And as you step outside the library, your hands still warm from parchment, you understand. You are walking through one of those moments. The sun is lower now. Long shadows stretch across the stone walkways like sleepy fingers, reaching for just one more moment of warmth. You walk slower than before, not because you're tired, but because fast feels wrong here. You follow a narrow path between two herb gardens, their scents thick and low to the ground. Lavender, thyme, basil, and something else. Maybe it's mint, maybe it's memory. Up ahead, a sign carved into olive wood. Imperial relaxation rooms, by appointment or vibe. You check your vibe. It qualifies. The doorway leads into a hushed atrium with several curtained doorways branching off in different directions. An attendant greets you, not with words, but with a slow bow and a small wooden token. On it, a single carved word, drift. You nod. Drifting is exactly what you're here to do. He points you gently toward the third curtain on the right. You brush it aside and step into a chamber that feels different, quieter than silence, heavier than stillness. The room has weight, but not pressure, like standing inside a lullaby. A single lounge awaits you, low, wide, covered in fabric that glows faintly golden in the candlelight. It's shaped impossibly like someone already relaxing. You lie down. The cushion adjusts to you, not through magic or mechanics, but because someone took the time to stitch intention into every layer. You sink, and the room accepts you. This is where the Emperor himself came to nap, but not just nap, to feel human, to sigh and be heard without consequence, to let the crown slip off without the world noticing. The walls are painted in delicate frescoes, not of gods or triumphs, but of half-formed thoughts. A bird pausing mid-flight as if reconsidering. A shepherd asleep in a field of empty scrolls. A fig tree swaying under the weight of unspoken compliments. You smile. This is not art for glory. This is art for drifting minds. At the center of the room stands a small marble table. On it, a brass bowl filled with tiny folded notes. A sign says, "Imperial Murmurs, take one." You do. You unfold a note that reads, "No empire ever fell because its people slept well." It's signed simply, "B. You chuckle softly." Later, historians would debate whether Benequietus actually wrote any of these himself, or whether a small team of poetic scribes simply channeled his energy and signed accordingly. But the truth is, it doesn't matter. You take a deep breath. And for a long suspended moment, you do nothing else. Outside this room, debates rage. Empires shift. Goats knock over fruit stands. But here there is nothing to win, nothing to prove. Only a chance to fold yourself inward, like a freshly laundered towel, and rest in a space shaped by care. The Emperor's favorite hour was this one. Late in the afternoon, when the heat retreated just enough for the stone to feel soft again. When the birds sang not to be heard, but just to keep themselves company. He'd lie here, not in luxury, but in gentle permission. A permission he spent his entire reign trying to offer the rest of Rome. There's a story that one evening, a general burst in with news of a border skirmish. Urgent, dire, full of names and maps. The Emperor, half dreaming, looked up and said, "Can it wait until the steam has settled?" The general, confused, said, "It's a matter of national security." To which Benequietus replied, "So is this." He waved his hand. The general sat. Was offered a fig, and was by all accounts asleep within 12 minutes. You consider this, the idea that rest could be resistance, that a ruler could choose softness without weakness, that peace too requires discipline, and cushions, lots of cushions. As the last light of day filters through a window shaped like a gentle yawn, you stretch once more, then sit up. There's no rush. There never is. But outside these walls, the world is still awake, still hungry, still moving faster than it needs to. You're not ready to go back yet. Not quite. You rise and walk to the table again. There's a stack of blank notes and a stylus resting beside the bowl. A small sign says, "Leave something for the next visitor." You write, "If you're reading this, you've arrived exactly on time." You fold it, add it to the bowl, and step back through the curtain into the golden hush of the hallway. The attendant nods again. You nod back. Nothing more needs to be said. You were wrapped in quiet, and now you carry it with you. You step back into the hallway, the warmth of the Imperial relaxation room still wrapped around your shoulders like a second skin. The corridor smells faintly of beeswax, slow-cooked herbs, and something oddly reminiscent of fresh laundry folded by a wise grandmother. As you walk, you notice a soft murmur ahead. Not conversation exactly, but something rhythmic. You follow it, turning a gentle corner into what seems at first like a side chamber, narrow, unmarked, and easy to miss. Inside, a crowd is gathered, seated on warm stones in a semicircle. They are not chatting. They are not fidgeting. They are watching. At the center stands a broad-shouldered man with a long grey beard and a towel tied like a sash across his chest. He is a steam judge, and this is the bathhouse. Olympics. You blink slowly. Of course, you've heard the stories. Citizens gathering once a week to test their nap prowess, towel-folding artistry, and steam-lounging stamina. What began as a spontaneous contest between two philosophers, who can lie still the longest without composing poetry, had evolved into something far more delightful. The man raises a hand. Next round, he announces softly, reclining elegance. You will be judged on posture, sigh fluency, and towel coordination. 3 contestants shuffle forward, and sight shows an old woman with a cane carved from sandalwood, a young man in the kind of toga favored by artisans, and what appears to be a goose. No one questions the goose. Each participant reclines carefully on their mats. The audience waits. Judges lean forward. One holds a feather, the universal tool for measuring micro-twitches of overexertion. The old woman sighs. It's deep, resonant. The room responds with a collective exhale. The young man stretches his arms out in a swan-like arc. A judge raises an eyebrow, impressed. The goose simply settles, and somehow it's perfect. You find a seat near the back, cushioned, of course, and observe with the awe of someone discovering an entire parallel society operating just beneath the surface of everyday decorum. Next comes blanket cocooning. Each contestant wraps themselves into a linen cocoon with one smooth, continuous motion. Points are deducted for exposed toes. A man in his 70s wraps himself so expertly that his own children in the audience gasp. A younger competitor attempts flair, an extra spin. It backfires. The blanket unfurls dramatically, leaving him exposed and judged. The steam judge, expressionless, dabs his forehead and declares, -2 for theatrical ambition, +1 for effort, net melancholy. The audience nods solemnly. It's fair. Next event. Longest eyes closed pause without actually falling asleep. This is a high-skill event. It requires balance, focus, a mastery of near slumber. You watch as competitors slip into that dreamy zone of soft breathing and internal pond metaphors. One woman recites a grocery list in her mind until it becomes poetry. A man conjures an image of a fig floating in warm honey. The goose remains excellent. You lean back, entranced. No prizes are awarded here, only towels, fresh, pre-warmed, scented faintly with laurel. Some say it's better than gold. There's a sense of quiet reverence to it all. These games are not about winning, they're about practice. The practice of rest, of letting go, of becoming exquisitely, publicly, peacefully unproductive. 1. Judge, a woman with sharp eyes and an impossibly slow blink, stands and addresses the group. In a world that hurries, may you be the pause. The audience hums approval. Someone bows. The goose honks softly. You find yourself strangely emotional. This place, this absurd and brilliant celebration of nap artistry, isn't a joke. Not really. It's a response, a soft rebellion against noise, a counterbalance to conquest. Proof that even an empire known for its roads and wars and aqueducts can also champion stillness as sport. The judges retreat. The audience disperses slowly, like clouds losing interest in the mountain beneath them. You remain seated. One of the towel-bearers offers you a mint-scented wrap. You accept it without question. You've earned nothing, but also everything. Before you leave, you glance at the engraved tile near the entrance. It reads, We do not train for speed here, we train for softness. And beneath it, smaller, barely visible, steam is the breath of rest. Let it shape you. You nod to no one in particular. And as you step back into the corridor, you carry with you not just the scent of mint and laurel, but the knowledge that somewhere in Rome at any hour, someone is mid-competition in the noble sport of tranquil excellence. After the gentle absurdity of the bathhouse Olympics, the world feels even softer than before. Your steps are slower now, not from weariness, but from deep admiration. As if you're walking through a museum of calm, where the exhibits are steam, stillness and the occasional goose, you turn a corner and find a small archway tucked between two mosaic-covered walls. Above it, etched in playful script, "Maintenance in progress. Enter quietly." You hesitate. Surely, this is off limits. But a passing attendant notices your pause, smiles kindly and says, "They don't mind an audience if you walk like steam." So you do. You walk like steam. The archway opens into a long, narrow chamber, lit by pale morning light that shouldn't exist, except that someone has cleverly designed the ceiling to scatter it like spilled milk across the floor. This is the plumber's wing, and what you see here is nothing short of sacred. 4 men in tunics the color of patience are kneeling beside an ancient pipe. It hisses softly, like a cat being told a secret. Steam coils upward in thin ribbons, carrying the scent of something metallic and slightly herbal. One of the plumbers is gently tapping the pipe with a tiny mallet made of wood and what appears to be quiet resolve. Another holds a scroll, nodding, as if consulting the wisdom of generations past. You find a seat near a pillar and watch. No one tells you to leave. No one even glances your way. This is not a performance. It's a ritual. Rome is often remembered for its wars and roads, but truly it survived because of its plumbing. And here in this room, you begin to understand why. The bathhouses, their heat, their water, their sigh-inducing perfection, rely on a labyrinth beneath the surface, pipes, valves, channels that carry warmth like veins through the marble bones of the city. And these men, they know every curve, every whisper of that subterranean anatomy. One adjusts a copper valve, another murmurs something about drift pressure. A third wipes his hands on a towel so clean it could be used to write love letters. Then, silence. They pause, all 4. They sit back on their heels, close their eyes, and listen. You hear nothing, but they do. Later, someone tells you this is called the listening, a mandatory step in every repair. Where the plumbers rest completely still to detect the mood of the system. They say every pipe has a personality. Some are stubborn, some weep too easily, some rattle with joy when the temperature is just right. One scroll, stored in the department of damp affairs, even claims that the pipes beneath the west wing hum lullabies when the moon is full. You don't know if that's true, but watching these men, kneeling in reverence beside a wheezing conduit, you wouldn't be surprised. The youngest plumber finally opens his eyes. He nods. No words, just a nod, and they all rise in unison, as if lifted by steam itself. One by one, they pack away their tools, oiled cloth, small brushes, a curious object that looks suspiciously like a baby spoon carved from marble. Then they bow to the pipe. Yes, bow, and leave. You sit there a little longer. You look around the room. There are no mosaics, no cushions, no scented oils, and yet you feel more rested than you have all day, because here is where the invisible work happens, where the empire whispers instead of shouts, where water learns patience and heat takes direction. Historians often ignore the plumbers. There are no epic poems about them, no bronze statues lining the roads, but Benequietus once said, "An empire that cannot maintain its steam is an empire that will collapse from the inside out." And so he declared plumbers of the people to be guardians of the quiet flow. He awarded them sandals with padded soles, gave them scrolls with blank pages for thoughts too soft to write yet, and he built them this room not for repairs but for reverence. You stand quietly, and as you leave, you notice a small inscription on the back of the arch you entered through. It reads, "Respect the silence beneath your feet. That is where your rest begins." You walk away slowly, not to avoid disrupting the pipes, though yes, that too, but because you now understand peace is not only what you see or feel. Sometimes it is what flows quietly beneath everything, holding it all together. You continue walking, your steps now so silent they feel ceremonial. After witnessing the plumbers in their sacred quiet, everything else seems slightly louder, even the breeze threading through the open-air corridor ahead. As you round the corner, a sharp, unfamiliar scent greets your nose. Sweet, pungent, and aggressively floral. It's not unpleasant, but it is insistent, like a perfume that tells you it's entering the room before you do. You've stumbled into the aromatic trials hall, unmistakable. A large arch bears the inscription, "Sense of the Empire," approved and otherwise. Inside, the ceiling is high and vaulted, with small vents at regular intervals exhaling scented vapors. Each vent is labeled with its current fragrance. Today's menu includes crushed bay leaf fig blossom in early morning, heated citrus peel, and one simply marked Experimental Number 7. You pause beneath Experimental Number 7. It hits your nostrils like a polite slap with a fruit salad. Not unpleasant, but confusing. Hints of melon, vinegar, and a very distant memory of someone's garden. Party gone slightly wrong. You look around. A group of officials in light robes, the Aromatic Council, are gathered near the center of the room, each holding a small fan made of palm leaves and judgment. They're currently testing a new oil, essence of goat rose. You watch one of them sniff, wince, and immediately write something on a wax tablet. Another nods slowly, contemplatively, as if the goat is speaking to him. This is not a joke. This is governance. You move to a quieter corner of the room where scrolls are displayed in glass cabinets. One is titled, "The Great Scent Revolt of Year 218. You lean in and read. When the Emperor approved the use of fermented radish oil in lower-tier bathhouses, a mild unrest followed. Citizens boycotted the caldarium. One poet fainted dramatically in a cloud of mustard-scented steam and was revived only with crushed fig leaves and a spoonful of almond milk. Another scroll lists scents banned by imperial decree, including smoked eel breath, crushed pickled plum during peak heat, anything described as emotionally sour. You laugh, softly. A nearby attendant glances at you, smiles, and hands you a small parchment square. It's infused with something light and lovely, maybe lavender. Or is that quiet optimism? The parchment is labeled Nap-Enhancing Blend Number 3 for dream vividness and emotional softness. You breathe it in. It works. You feel yourself remembering dreams you haven't had yet. It turns out that scent, in the empire of Benequietus, was not a luxury. It was policy. He believed smell-shaped mood and mood-shaped rest, and rest, as we now know, was the foundation of all Roman strength. In fact, scrolls uncovered decades later reveal that for a brief time, Rome employed a position known as the nasal strategist. Their job? To coordinate scent diffusion with civic schedule. For example, lavender during tax season, frankincense for public mourning, fresh linen aroma on Senate debate days. It didn't help. You continue your stroll through the room. Each vent gently mists a new mood across your senses. There's sleepy clove, afternoon riverbed, and the hauntingly vague, regretful orange. Some work, some fail spectacularly. A sign by one vent reads, "We apologize for the previous trial. The scent known as Melted Shield will not return." And beneath it, in smaller writing, Aromatic Council Note, "Not all bravery smells." Good. Eventually, you come to a small fountain at the center of the room. It bubbles gently with water infused with the current council favorite, Contented Rain. You cup your hands. Sip. It tastes like you wish a breeze would feel. Cool. Restful. A little wistful. A final sign near the exit reads, "The nose, like the soul, deserves a soft place to land." Benequietus, after sneezing in the Senate and declaring it a sacred moment. You step back into the corridor, the air now tinged with 20 memories of things that never happened. You are scented, but not perfumed, cleansed, but not scrubbed. More than anything, you are now a vessel of carefully measured softness, engineered one molecule at a time. And as the breeze meets you again, you smell, faintly, your own peace rising like steam. Back in the hallway, your sense of smell is temporarily elevated to divine status. Everything has scent now, even silence, even thought. You pass a fig tree in a clay planter and swear it nods at you in approval. Then, without any grand signage or warning, you enter what might be the most unusual space in the entire complex, the bathhouse inspection office. The door is small, wooden, painted the soft grey of a clean stone. A single plaque beside it reads, "Where steam is watched and towels are judged, enter thoughtfully." Inside, the light is low and deliberate, not dark, just focused, like a room designed to evaluate your ability to exhale correctly. Behind, a central desk sits a woman of indeterminate age, posture too perfect to be natural, yet somehow not rigid. She looks up, not unkindly, but as if she's assessing your density. She gestures to the seat across from her, cushioned, of course. You sit, a scroll sits open in front of her. Your name is on it, or perhaps just your essence. She dips a quill into something invisible and writes a single note, warm soak. Slight goose influence, excellent drift rate, minor towel hesitation. You blink. She smiles slightly, speaks for the first time. You overcorrected your wrap in the tepidarium. You don't argue. She's not wrong. The Inspectorate of Relaxation and Thermal Regulation, or as locals call it, the Soft Squad, was founded during the height of the steam reform. Their job? To ensure consistency of peace. Not enforcement, not punishment, just assurance. That the benches weren't too cold. That the steam in the caldarium carried the correct amount of citrus optimism. That the whispering vault never echoed. You'd assumed it was bureaucratic fluff. But sitting here, across from someone who has clearly watched hundreds of towel folds, without blinking, you understand. This is real. She lifts a small bell, rings it, and from a door behind her, two more inspectors appear. They carry small wooden trays with labeled items, a thermometer shaped like a lyre, a scroll labeled Recent, Guest Softness Index. A towel, your towel, folded and inspected. One of them sniffs. The other hums thoughtfully. Finally, the inspector looks at you again and says, "We'd like to recommend you for Level 3 NAP certification." Your eyebrows raise. She continues, "You hovered in pre-sleep stillness for 19 minutes without twitching. Your breath synced with the room's rhythm twice, and during the whispering vault session you exhaled in perfect cadence with the story's emotional midpoint." You try to respond, but she holds up a finger, gracefully. There's no pressure, it's just recognition. She slides a small stone token toward you, etched on its surface. Benequietus, classis tertia. Below it, a very faint smiley. Face, tasteful. You hold the token like it might hum. It doesn't, but it does feel warm. Behind the desk, a wall is covered in similar tokens, some bronze, some marble, one made entirely of compressed goat fluff. Each name has a short note beside. Found harmony in bath to cold pool transition. Achieved emotional release during towel fold. Went 7 days without a single disruptive footstep. These aren't awards, they're affirmations. A quiet acknowledgement that even peace requires attention. As you stand to leave, the inspector offers you a final note. You might consider experimenting with fennel steam. It suits your breath cadence. You nod, as if this makes perfect sense. It does, actually. Before you exit, you pass a small side room labeled Towel, Observation Chamber. Inside, several inspectors sit behind a glass window, watching as clean towels are gently fluffed and laid out. They take notes, whisper critiques. One of them smiles, just once, when a trainee folds with particular grace. Back in the corridor, the air feels cooler, calmer. You glance at your token again. It doesn't matter to anyone else, it might not even matter to you tomorrow. But today the Empire noticed you rested well, and that is enough. The corridor ahead curves to the right, gently, like the tail of a cat settling in for a nap. You follow it without thinking. Here, choices aren't made, they're felt. And this one leads you straight into a space unlike any you've yet encountered. In the world of Imperial steam. It's vast, open, quiet in a different way than the other rooms. Not muted, but buzzing softly with conversation, movement, and the unmistakable scent of rosemary oil and gossip. Welcome to the Bathhouse Gossip. Network. You don't need a sign to know where you are. You can feel it in the air, charged but not tense, curious but not cruel. This is where Rome talks to itself. The chamber is lined with low benches, steam vents gently billowing at the corners like background actors in a dream. People sit in twos and threes wrapped in towels, leaned in just slightly. Every sentence begins with, "Did you hear?" Or, "Apparently." Or the always trustworthy, "Someone who knows someone said." You find a bench near the edge, warm, worn in, exactly the right distance from the most vocal group in the room. You listen. One woman is explaining how the emperor sleeps in a hammock made from retired Senate robes. Another claims that lavender isn't native to Rome. It was a gift from a Gallic prince in love with steam. You nod to yourself. You believe both completely. A man nearby is whispering about a lost bathhouse hidden beneath the city, reserved. For those who've achieved NAP certification level 5. No one can confirm it exists, but everyone hopes it does. The bathhouse gossip isn't mean. It's not sharp or heavy. It's soft, witty, gently embroidered around the edges, like a towel that someone cared enough to hem. And in this world, gossip isn't a threat to order. It is the order. Because in a society built on steam and softness, rumor serves a different purpose. It binds, connects, delights. Even the emperor understands this. There's a story, shared often but never written down, that Benequietus once disguised himself and joined a group in this very room. He sat, eavesdropping quietly, until someone said, "I hear the emperor is working on a law to replace punishment with firm naps," at which point he allegedly chuckled, loudly enough for someone to ask, "What do you know about it?" And he replied, "Only what I heard in the steam." You smile. You'd believe that too. There's a kind of magic to the space. You begin to realize it's been designed not to echo, but to carry voices gently, like sound wading through honey. Each sentence bends slightly before reaching your ear, softened by arches and warm air. It creates a tone of perpetual casualness. No one yells, no one argues. Even disagreements are conducted like two cats politely batting each other with pillows. Figs are superior to dates, someone insists. Only in jam form comes the reply unbothered. Consensus is optional. You overhear a discussion about the emperor's alleged invention of the dream nap. The theory is that if you sleep deeply enough in the whispering vault, while listening to the scent of time and the voice of a retired sea captain, you'll have dreams someone else once had. It's clearly nonsense. You love it. Someone stands near a fountain and begins a monologue, half poem, half rumor, about a senator who tried to legislate against overly comfortable cushions. He failed, and now all official scrolls bear a watermark of a reclining sloth in protest. This place. It's not merely for speaking. It's for weaving the soft fabric of collective story. A city cannot function on laws alone. It needs speculation, shared smiles, moments that may or may not be true but are absolutely necessary. You rise after a time. No one watches you go. They're too busy debating whether bees can dream. One man insists they can, and that's why honey tastes like secrets. As you pass the arch on your way out, you finally see the inscription above. Words, when softened by steam, tell truths the laws forget. You don't know who wrote it. Probably everyone. And as you walk away, the scent of rosemary still in your hair, you realize you've heard more truth in this room of embellished maybes than in any court or senate floor. This is how Rome knows itself. Not through decree, but through whispers in mist and the shared joy of maybe. You emerge from the Bathhouse Gossip Network with your brain pleasantly marinated in speculation. It's hard to say what's true anymore, and somehow that's comforting. There's a peace in uncertainty when no one's in a rush to be right. Your next steps take you into a quieter hallway, lined with statues that seem to lean just slightly, as if listening to the remnants of whispered tales. One statue holds a towel with deep seriousness. Another, more playful, appears to be Mid-snooze against a pedestal labelled Poet interrupted. At the end of the hall is a massive wooden door, arched, ancient, and made from a tree, rumoured to have once grown beside the Emperor's first bathhouse. Carved above it in large, gentle letters, "For those who dream in marble, you enter." The ceiling rises into a wide, echoless dome. The air is cooler here, dry, still, contemplative. You've arrived at the most mysterious space in the entire Thermi system, the Hall of Architectural Regret. It's silent, save for the soft shuffle of sandals and the occasional creak of old wood. No steam, no scent, just thought. This is where bathhouse architects come to confess. Displayed around the room are scale models of failed projects, a bathhouse shaped like a snail shell, intended to symbolize life's spirals. It leaked in 3 directions, a steam chamber that rotated slowly to mimic the Earth's movement, made several guests dizzy. One poet claimed to have seen the future. He was not invited back. A cold plunge pool with mirrored ceilings and whisper vents. "The silence was too loud," said one early reviewer. Each exhibit is accompanied by a humble plaque bearing the name of its designer, the date of construction, and one simple line, "We meant well." A sign at the entrance explains the philosophy. In Rome, we do not hide our failures. We display them gently so others may rest more wisely. You walk slowly past each display. Some models are beautiful, others confusing. One features a bench so curved it never supported anyone's back. Another tried to combine laundry and napping, resulting in an unfortunate incident involving over-dried togas and unintended exfoliation. And yet, you find yourself admiring each one, not in spite of the flaws, but because of them. This was a room of trying, of thoughtful errors, of experiments in peace. You reach the final exhibit. It's different. A single slab of uncarved marble. Beside it, a cushion. You sit. The plaque simply reads, "Unbuilt." Because maybe some peace should stay imagined. You stay there longer than you planned. The slab doesn't speak, it doesn't steam, it doesn't hum, but it holds a kind of stillness you haven't yet found anywhere else. A stillness shaped not by what was made, but by what was left alone. Benequietus himself visited this room often, sometimes alone, sometimes with apprentices. He'd sit beside the slab and say nothing for hours. Some say he whispered apologies to it. Others say he dreamed aloud to it, imagining bathhouses suspended in clouds or carved into cliffs. One record claims he fell asleep here once and woke up with a new idea. Bathtubs should come with poetry holders. The idea never caught on. But it lives here now, like everything else. As you stand to leave, you look back at the uncarved stone. A final plaque beneath it reads, "Peace is not just built. Sometimes it is allowed." You exit into the now familiar corridors, the ambient air warmer again. You re-enter the world of steam and movement, carrying a strange, silent reverence. You've seen the foundation, the messy, well-meant, beautifully, failed attempts that made the softness possible, and that you realize is the point. Peace is not perfect, it's not symmetrical, it's not even always successful, but it's pursued, and in Rome, it's displayed. When you step back out from the Hall of Architectural Regret, the air feels different, lighter, as though the very molecules around you have been softened by contemplation. Your feet return to the smooth stone pathway, and for a moment, you simply walk, not toward anything, just within, until eventually, the soft rhythm of wind chimes leads you toward a large courtyard draped in morning shade. Children are gathered here, though no one calls it a school. This is the Festival of Steam, and today is a special day, once a month, on a rotating schedule that no one fully understands but everyone trusts. The bathhouses hold a day of celebration, not for gods, not for emperors, but for warmth, water, and what Benequietus called the quiet happiness of shared fog. Today's courtyard is strung with linen banners, not painted, embroidered. You pass one that reads, "Softness is a civic virtue." Another, "Even the lion naps." A gentle voice calls out, "Citizen, would you like to judge the steam loaf bake-off?" You turn to find a baker holding a tray of warm, fragrant bread, still steaming from the oven. Each loaf has been shaped to resemble a moment of bathhouse life. One is a curled figure on a bench. Another is a goose wrapped in a towel. One is just an elegant swirl labeled lavender nap at noon. You take a bite of the latter. It tastes like peace. In one corner, a group of young students is being taught how to fold towels with precision and affection. Their instructor holds up an example. It must look like it's already dreaming. Elsewhere, musicians play a gentle melody on flutes made from hollow reeds grown beside the aqueducts. The tune is called Sighs in G minor. You pause to listen. Nearby, a trio of performers reenacts The Day the Emperor Forgot to Nap. It's an exaggerated comedy, complete with yawning guards, a goat reading tax law, and an ending where everyone collapses into a pile of cushions. You laugh along with the others. The children in the front row clap enthusiastically, even the elderly. Nod approvingly. There's no tension here, no grandeur. Just a mutual understanding that relaxation too can be celebrated. A man approaches carrying a scroll. He wears the robes of a mid-level bathhouse bureaucrat, modest but immaculately pressed. He offers you the scroll and says, "We're collecting reflections from citizens today. Stories, dreams, overheard whispers. Would you care to contribute, you think for a moment? Then you take the stylus and write, 'I came in tired, I now understand rest as a public offering.'" He bows, no seal, no signature, just another contribution to the growing archive of quiet. Revolutions. The festival continues around you, like a city humming under its breath. People sip fig leaf tea. Others lie on blankets, watching clouds. A goat naps under a sign that says, "Do not wake unless you're extremely interesting." You sit near a small pond where children are floating paper boats. Each boat carries a message. "Let Rome be calm. May your dreams be unhurried. Steam me gently." One child's boat tips slightly, caught in a ripple. She frowns, then shrugs. "That one's going to the Emperor," she whispers. You smile because the point is not that the boat arrives, only that it was sent. The same could be said of peace, of rest, of everything you've encountered within these walls. This festival isn't a break from the system. It is the system, a regular pause, a calendar entry for exhaling, a government-sanctioned reminder that joy doesn't need to be loud, to matter. As the sun shifts overhead, casting gentle shadows through olive trees, you rise again, not to leave, just to keep drifting. You pass a stone bench with the following words carved in curved, loving script. "Celebrate the day that asked nothing of you," and just below it, "Benequietus on the first festival of steam." You think, yes, let today be exactly that. You leave the courtyard of the Festival of Steam with a slow, satisfied pace, like someone walking home after a long massage and a well-timed nap. The scents fade behind you, fresh bread, soft herbs, and the indescribable smell of shared stillness. Ahead, the architecture changes slightly. The ceilings lower. The walls curve more intentionally. This is the part of the bathhouse reserved for those who have opinions about towels. Welcome to the gallery of bathhouse status. This isn't where emperors pose. It's where citizens reveal their softest ambitions. Rome is still Rome, after all. Even in stillness, there are tears. You step inside and immediately notice the walls, lined with painted wooden panels, each one depicting a real citizen's public bathing persona. There are titles beneath each portrait. He who brings his own steam spoon. Mist Master of the Southern Courtyard. Consul of Correct Blanket Tension. You pause in front of one particularly large panel, featuring a woman reclining on 6 stacked cushions, her towel folded into the shape of a sea creature. The inscription reads, "Marina of the Middle Benches, achieved perfect recline at age 37. Next to her is a plaque with a quote, "If I could have married a nap, I would have." Around the gallery, you begin to notice small podiums with artifacts on display, a gilded ladle used in the famous soup steam experiment, the original blueprint for a towel warming system powered by idle philosophers, a sandal said to have been worn by the poet Benequietus when he wrote Ode to a Slightly Too Hot Pool. There is no mockery here. This is reverence. In a world where bathhouses have become centers of political life, poetic inspiration, and civic softness, personal style has evolved into quiet prestige. You learn that entire social classes are organized around preferred steam, thickness, that there's a waiting list for the most acoustically balanced alcoves, that once a merchant paid extra tax just to have his bathwater infused with a rotating seasonal jam. And yes, there's a term for people who bathe with too much enthusiasm, splashocrats. They're not well regarded. One placard gently states, "Moderation in all things, especially motion." As you turn a corner, you encounter something even more curious, a side room labeled Towel Couture. Inside, mannequins display legendary towel styles, the fold of serenity, made famous by a diplomat who negotiated peace while reclined, the cascade of linen, known for its 12-layered elegance and rumored neck support benefits, the whisper wrap, so light it was once mistaken for absence. There's even a section titled Towel Scandals. One display shows a misaligned pleat that caused a minor stir during a high-profile nap demonstration. Another tells of a guest who layered their towel over someone else's bench, violating the code of bench exclusivity. The resulting conflict was resolved peacefully, of course, over fig tea and a group meditation under the misting dome. Rome, after all, has rules for rest. In the final hallway of the gallery you find a mirror, not ornate, not framed in gold, just a single polished surface with a soft inscription above. How do you wear your stillness? You catch your reflection. You're relaxed, yes. But more than that, you're composed. The gentle kind of composed that can only come from a nap, earned, not stolen. You sit on the bench below the mirror. A subtle sound begins to play around you, the recorded breath of 1,000 resting citizens, woven together into an ambient lullaby of the Roman people at peace. It's beautiful, not dramatic, not even particularly melodic, just deeply human. You stay there for a while, listening. You hear someone breathing in the exact rhythm you did during your earlier nap. Maybe that was you, maybe someone else. Either way, you feel seen. When you finally rise, a small scroll is waiting on a pedestal near the exit. You unroll it. It reads, "In Rome, your status is not how loudly you speak, but how gently you can breathe when others are near." And that, you realize, may be the empire's finest invention of all. As you leave the gallery of bathhouse status, your feet seem to float more than walk. Something about witnessing a society that curated its peace so deliberately makes your own sense of movement optional. You find yourself on a narrow walkway between two wings of the complex. The wind brushes past like a slow exhale, and below you glimpse rooftops of other bathhouses across the city, small puffs of steam drifting up like thoughts from well-rested minds. There's a small sign ahead, carved into an olive wood plank. Somnus Provinciarum, Sleepy Cities. You smile. The name sounds like something made up by a poet, and approved by a bureaucrat just sleepy enough to let it slide. You step inside and find a long hall, lined with shelves, scrolls, miniature models, and glowing wall maps of the empire. This is where Rome documents how the bathhouse philosophy spread to provinces far from the capital, each of them interpreting the art of stillness in its own curious local way. A small mosaic depicts an elderly couple in Britannia, wrapped in woolen, towels resting under clouds and drinking what appears to be hot cabbage water. Their faces are stone serene. A plaque reads, "The steamless baths of the north," proof that intention matters more than temperature. To the right, a bronze globe spins slowly above a map of regional nap customs. You learn, in Gaul, bathhouses were built near vineyards and offered wine mist infusions. Guests reported napping so deeply they dreamed in languages they didn't speak. In Numidia, open-air nap platforms were elevated to catch the breeze from sand dunes. Some claimed to have achieved emotional levitation. In Anatolia, mineral springs were lined with soft clay and fresh lavender roots. Bathers would write their worries into the mud, let them dry, then wash them away. Each region had their own tax, of course, approved by local governors, inspired by Benequietus's Directive of National Rest. You read excerpts of tax logs. collected 4 sheep, 9 loaves and 1 very compliant chicken in exchange for monthly eucalyptus rags. Citizen Attilius refuses to nap on even days, adjusted his towel schedule accordingly. In one section, you see a model of a floating bathhouse from the port of Massilia, engineered to sway gently with the sea, like a cradle for sailors between voyages. Nicknamed the Womb of the Wind, it became famous for inspiring spontaneous lullabies. You pause before a mural of a provincial governor's house in Dalmatia. He added a nap wing to his estate and converted the courtroom into a cushioned storage chamber. Quote engraved beneath, "Justice delayed is still just, if delayed for a nap." Even in regions where public bathing wasn't common, the message took root. You read about a mountain village in Dacia where steam was scarce but silence was abundant. They constructed stillness rooms, huts built of soft wood wrapped in cloth with openings only for wind. One letter from a villager reads, "We have no pools, but we sit in circles and listen to pine needles fall. It works." You feel a sense of awe, not from imperial expansion, but from cultural surrender. Rome didn't impose this stillness, it offered it, and people weary and curious accepted, some with skepticism, some with excitement, but almost all with relief. There's a section near the back of the room titled Nap Disputes and Cultural Adaptation. Here, scrolls detail the moments where interpretations of rest diverged. One governor banned sandals in napping zones. Another enforced synchronized sighing. A third tried to replace bathhouses with dream tents. Mixed results. But always the core principle remained. Make space. Add warmth. Invite pause. You finish your loop around the room and notice a quote etched above the exit. "An empire is strongest when its farthest corners are calm." Benequietus, during his address to the provinces, delivered from a reclining couch. As you leave, you glance once more at the spinning bronze globe. Each dot marks a place where the bathhouse ethos bloomed. Tiny embers of softness in a world, often too hard. You realize now this wasn't just about steam. It was about permission. A societal whisper that said, "You may rest here, and that will be enough." You leave the Somnus Provinciarum slowly, your fingers brushing the carved doorway, as if to thank it for its quiet stories. The corridor ahead is long, dimly lit and almost empty, until you hear a familiar sound. Footsteps, not hurried, not rhythmic, but slow shuffling, deliberate. Someone in sandals that have walked this path many times. You turn the corner and catch sight of him, the Emperor Benequietus, or rather, a statue of him. But this one's different. No laurel crown, no armor, no outstretched hand gesturing dramatically toward the future. He's reclined, wrapped in a modest towel, eyes closed, head tilted just enough to imply he's listening to a distant harp that only he can hear. The plaque at the base doesn't list titles, no conquests, no lineage. It simply says, "He who taxed gently so that others might sleep soundly." You stare at the statue longer than expected. It's peaceful, yes, but there's something else, a sense of humility carved into stone. As if the sculptor wanted to immortalize not just a man, but a pause. You sit on a bench across from it. Naturally, it's warm, pillowed, exactly the right height. From here, you can see that someone has placed a fig beside the statue's foot, fresh, unbitten. An offering, another tribute, less formal, leans against the plinth. A scroll tied with ribbon. You open it. It's not a decree, not a quote, just a story. I saw him once, not in the Senate, not in a parade, but in the caldarium, talking to a baker about yeast temperatures. They laughed. He said, "May your dough rise as gently as the people's mood." You smile. This sounds exactly like him. You remember now, he rarely gave speeches. He preferred letters, whispers, decrees left in garden fountains or tucked beneath public cushions. And while the other emperors expanded territory, he expanded softness. Not everyone approved. The Senate grumbled, as it always did. There were murmurs of weakness, of decadence disguised as progress. But Benequietus didn't argue. He just opened another bathhouse and made entry free for anyone who brought a poem. He believed that peace was a kind of infrastructure. And so he taxed the things that made people hard. Excess noise, unforgiving benches, overcomplicated sandals, and he subsidized the gentle. One scroll describes the Great Unbustling, a multi-week initiative during which couriers were given soft shoes and told, "Deliver nothing loudly. If it's urgent, it can still be kind." Yuki, rise from the bench and walk slowly around the statue. Behind it, carved into the wall, are words that don't appear on any official scrolls. They're not part of any monument elsewhere in Rome, but they are perhaps the closest thing to a final will and testament from the emperor. Etched in calm script, "When I am gone, let them remember me, not for marble, but for the nap someone took in a room I built. Let my reign be felt in towels folded with care, in silence that smells faintly of lemon oil, in the way strangers learn to share steam." You feel a gentle chill, not from cold, but from being seen across time. You sit, once more, not because you need to, but because it feels right. And in that still moment, across from a stone man who once whispered laws into the fog, you understand something simple and vast. Empires rise and fall. But rest, true, generous, intentional rest, leaves echoes that never fade. You stay beside the statue longer than intended, long enough that time seems to pool around your ankles like warm bathwater. Even the light in the corridor cooperates, soft, steady, golden, like it knows this isn't the moment to rush you forward. Eventually, you stand and walk. The path winds through a quiet garden now, hidden between wings of the bathhouse complex. Small citrus trees line the walkway, their blossoms open and perfuming the breeze like they were coached to. Birds hop across the stone edges of shallow fountains. You pass one, and it doesn't even flinch. You're moving too slowly to startle anything anymore. And then ahead, a large door, round-topped, dark cedar, embroidered with vines carved so delicately they might grow if left alone. Above it, the words, "Whispers from the tiles." You hesitate. Something about the phrase feels heavier, not sad, but deeper. You enter. The room is massive and domed, but hushed. There are no windows, only candles placed along the edges, their flames low and respectful. The floor is tiled entirely in mosaic, no blank spots, no repeating patterns. At first, say it's beautiful. Then it starts talking, not literally, but the images. Each tile contains a story, not of emperors or gods, but of bathers. Ordinary Romans, citizens who came here for warmth, rest, reflection. You walk slowly, letting your eyes trace the path laid beneath your feet. One tile shows a man asleep, his open book face down on his stomach. A child watches him, fascinated. Inscription, "He dreamed of a bakery, woke up and opened one." Another, a woman wringing out a towel beside her aging mother, both smiling softly. Her mother once taught her to wrap tightly. Now she wraps gently. Next, a bearded man, eyes closed, holding hands with someone who isn't quite there. He came every week, said the steam helped him remember her laugh. Some tiles are humorous. A goose stealing a sandal. It was never returned. Youth slipping on soap mid-monologue. His argument lost traction, literally. But others are quiet devastations whispered through porcelain. A bench left empty each day after its regular bather passed. We left it warm just in case. A woman who napped beside strangers for 40 years and left behind a scroll titled, "On Kindness and Foot Placement." You kneel near one mosaic, a detailed scene of the caldarium, rendered in subtle color. In the background, a figure sits alone in shadow. There's no inscription. But someone has left a small piece of dried lavender at the edge. You don't need words, you understand. These are not monuments to the dead. They are preserved breaths. Moments that mattered only to the people who lived them, and then somehow mattered to everyone else too. Rome, as it turns out, doesn't just archive triumphs, it archives softness. And this room, this floor, is its gentle museum. You begin to notice something else. Your footsteps. They fall between stories, not on them. The tiles are arranged to guide you, to honor those who came before, to remind you, even walking can be a conversation. You think of Benequietus. He once said, quietly, over tea, Every citizen has a story. Not all need to be told, but all deserve to be heard by the floor they rest upon. The room continues. You come across a tile depicting a man sleeping upright, clearly mid-sentence. He paused to argue and accidentally achieved inner peace. You stop in your tracks and chuckle, then sit right there, on the mosaic bench beside the scene, warm as if expecting you, and for a long time, you do nothing. You don't look for meaning. You don't pass for metaphor. You just sit in a room tiled, with the dreams of strangers, and feel strangely, wonderfully unknown. You don't remember standing, only that eventually your body rose from the mosaic bench like mist, lifting off warm stone. Some part of you remains in the hall of tiles, with the stories baked into porcelain, with the lavender-scented silence, with the floor that remembers every soul who once forgot their name in steam. The corridor ahead is darker now, not gloomy, just dusk-colored, the end-of-day kind of quiet. You follow the stone floor until you arrive at a small chamber carved directly into the outer wall of the bathhouse. Above the entrance, painted in soft ochre script, the rise of Bath poets. You step inside. The room is small, barely enough. Space for 20 people seated on round cushions arranged in circles, but it hums with reverence. In one corner, a clay water jug drips slowly into a bowl, a rhythm meant to mimic the tempo of nap breathing. Drip, drip, pause, drip. At the center of the room, a pedestal. On it, a scroll case made of carved cedar, worn smooth by many gentle hands. Next to it, a sign. Take a poem. Leave one, if moved to. You do. You unroll a slim scroll, warm from proximity to the light. The first poem is anonymous. Most are. Today I sat beside a stranger and listened to them sleep. It said more than any speech I've heard in the forum made of noise. You exhale. You pick another. The water touched my toes and forgot my name. I let it. I didn't need it just then. You sit with that one longer. These aren't grand verses, not epics, not declarations. They're fragments, whispers pressed into wax. Soft truths meant only for the few who drift slow enough to catch them. You walk to the far wall, where small clay tablets are mounted in uneven rows. These are the permanent pieces, poems etched by hand and fired in sleep-hardened kilns, some short. Her single sigh between two people is more than history deserves. Some curious. I dreamt a goat folded my towel. I woke up grateful. Some utterly breathtaking. Rome built aqueducts. But the warmth I carry came from someone sitting beside me without need for words. In a corner sits a man with a harp, not playing it, just holding it, cradling it like a child he refuses to wake. He notices you and gives a nod. He gestures toward a blank scroll and a stylus. You hesitate, then you walk over. You sit, you think, and finally you write, I came to rest. But now I understand that every bath I entered was a door into myself I had forgotten to knock on. You roll the scroll gently. Leave it in the basket marked for tomorrow's reader. You look up. More people have entered. No one says a word. But everyone breathes in sync. Someone is folding tiny paper fans and placing them beside each scroll like bookmarks for the wind. You stand. Walk once more to the cedar pedestal. And before leaving, you touch it lightly with 2 fingers, a kind of thank you. As you exit, you see a quote carved above the door, backward, so only those leaving can read it. The empire needed more soldiers, but we sent out poets wrapped in towels. And somehow, it worked. You step back into the hallway. Steam curls gently through the air, as if punctuation to what you've just experienced. Rome, you realize, didn't just give people permission to rest. It gave them language, to describe it. And in doing so, it reminded them that softness isn't silence. It's poetry that remembers how to breathe. You step into a hallway dimmer than the rest, lit only by oil lamps with flames as steady as monks. The walls here are bare, no scrolls, no mosaics, just silence and stone. At the end of the passage, a curtain, heavier than the others, thick linen, faintly damp, smells like rosemary, beeswax, and the kind of secrets no one minds being shared. You part it and enter. The air is thick, not from heat, though it's warm, but from something else. Tension, or rather, the ghost of tension. This is the place where it used to live. You've arrived at the chamber known quietly as Scandal in the Steam. It's not a large room, but it feels dense, like it's holding its breath, waiting for the last rumour to cool. There are benches arranged in a circle around a central pool. The water here doesn't move. No ripples, no steam. A still pool, kept cool intentionally, because heat would blur the memory of what happened here. A plaque on the far wall tells the story simply. One day, someone replaced the massage oil with fish sauce. You blink. That's not what you expected. You read on. No one confessed, but 5 citizens smelled suspicious. A towel was found with anchovy residue. The masseur cried. A goose fainted. The room has preserved the aftermath. It wasn't a revolution, no riots, no uprisings, but people stopped talking for an entire afternoon, which in a Roman bathhouse is tantamount to civil unrest. You sit on a bench and take it in. There's something beautiful about how this was handled. Not erased, not exaggerated, just remembered. Steam, the plaque says, is honest. It reveals everything. And when scandal rises, it curls like mist, visible for a moment, then gone. But here it lingers, honored like a noble sigh. Along one wall, there's a mural, hand-painted, unfinished. Depicts a man looking sheepishly at a basket of herbs, while a masseur holds a jar labeled garum with one raised eyebrow. In the corner, a goose lies on a cushion with a fan. Below the mural, a phrase is etched. It wasn't the fish. It was the timing. You laugh softly. The room welcomes it. You realize that this room, too, is part of the Empire's design. Not every moment in a public space is perfect. Sometimes towels fall. Sometimes oil is fishy. Sometimes people misread the label. But here, mistakes are stored without malice. You look to your right. There's a bench marked for apologies. Citizens used to sit there and offer brief public admissions. Never names, never blame. Just statements like, I oversteamed the West Wing. I borrowed a cushion and did not return it symmetrical. I told someone the tepidarium had cookies. It did not. Each confession was followed by a single question from the attendant. Do you want to forget it or remember it better? That was it. Restorative justice by way of bath. One scroll sealed in a cabinet here records the Emperor's own scandal. He once accidentally wore 2 left sandals to a ceremony, said nothing, tripped during a speech, refused to have it erased. From the records, he later commissioned a towel embroidered with the phrase, My balance is imperfect, my empire need not be. It sold surprisingly well. You stand now. The room has done its work. You feel no shame, only understanding. Outside, life is messy. Even here, even in a city of steam and silence, mistakes sneak in with the sandals. But they are not exiled. They are invited, witnessed, softened. You turn to leave. Near the exit, carved into a wooden panel, is a parting phrase. The warmest rooms know what went wrong and welcome you anyway. You pull the curtain aside. Step back into the corridor. And as you walk, your steps feel easier, because you've been reminded that even softness has edges, and still, you are held. The corridor ahead is cool again, the kind of cool that doesn't chill but clears, like the last breath before sleep or the space between one thought and the next. You walk slowly, because that's the only way this part of the bathhouse allows. And then you notice the light shift, just slightly. It's softer, almost blue. You've arrived at a long, low room, and at first glance it appears empty. Then you notice the steam. Thin, barely there tendrils rising from the far wall like dreams forgetting their shape. You step inside. This is the fading steam chamber, a room meant to hold the end of things, not death, not departure, but diminishment. A sign near the doorway reads, For steam that has done its work. The room is lined with stone benches, but only a few are occupied. Most of the guests here sit alone, some with eyes closed, some just watching the slow curl of mist like it's a fading story they once knew by heart. You take a seat. The stone beneath you is barely warm now, and the steam, you only feel it if you stop trying. This is the final step in the bathhouse cycle, not a place of action but of release. Here the temperature drops. The scent lightens. Even the sound grows thinner. Nothing left but the occasional drip of water behind the walls and the soft shuffle of towels being gathered with final care. You remember reading about this place once. A footnote in a scroll. Benequietus had it added after his first public nap tour. He said, "We offer warmth generously, but we must also teach how to let it go." This is that lesson. You breathe slowly, deeply, deliberately, the way the room seems to want you to. And with each breath, the details of the day begin to blur, not disappear, but fade gently. You no longer recall which steam room smelled of rosemary, which bench made your knees sing, whether the goose ever returned your sandal. It doesn't matter, that's the point. In the center of the chamber, a slow drip of water falls from the ceiling onto a flat stone. It is not timed. It is not symmetrical. It simply is. Each drop lands with the patience of someone who's never needed to arrive anywhere on time. You watch it. One drop, a pause. Another. Nothing more, and yet it holds you there longer than any speech could. This room, like the empire it lives in, knows when to stop insisting, when to leave space, when to offer nothing but a cushion for a moment that asks for no more. You glance around and see a plaque on the wall. It's barely legible, smoothed over by age and vapor, but if you squint, it says, "There is a kind of wisdom in not refilling the steam." You lean back. The air carries the scent of things. Once warmed, lavender, yes, fig, possibly. Time itself. You realize this is the part of the journey that cannot be rushed and cannot be repeated, only exhaled, a soft, polite goodbye to a world that never demanded much from you, except that you slow down long enough to remember who you are without urgency. In the far corner, a towel is folded and left on the bench. Its presence says, "I was here, I rested, that is enough." You smile, and as you stand, you feel no need to mark the moment. You don't need to remember everything, because the steam, even as it fades, has already folded itself into your breath. You step out of the fading steam chamber, lighter than you've been in days or weeks or maybe even years. It's hard to know. Softness distorts time the way mist distorts light. Edges gone, moments gently blended. Ahead is the final wing. You can feel it. The corridor narrows, not in size, but in intention. There are fewer mosaics now, no whispers, no fountains, just walls washed in the faint hue of late afternoon. And there at the end waits a quiet inscription, "Last tax, last nap." You enter. This room is unlike the others. The marble gives way to wood, smooth, aged, a little creaky in the best way. The lighting isn't from above, but from the floor itself. Oil lamps nestled in shallow recesses, casting warmth upward like the last golden breath before sleep. There are beds here. Not many. Just a few. Each one modest, well-blanketed, lovingly placed. At the far end of the room, a man sleeps beneath a heavy wool coverlet, snoring softly. No one disturbs him. He may have been here for hours. He may never leave. This is the final nap chamber. Not for death. Just for enough. In the center of the room is a stone pedestal. Upon it rests an ancient scroll, cracked, yellowed, slightly curled. It's the Emperor's last decree. Not read aloud in the forum, not chiseled into monuments, simply left here. For those who would reach this room. For those who stayed long enough to truly slow down, you lean in and read. To those who have walked every warm hall and sighed into every gentle bench, I leave you this final tax exemption. Rest without payment. Sleep without permission. You've given your stillness to the city. Let the city now return it in full. Signed simply, B. Benequietus. You exhale. It's the kind of breath that feels like closing a chapter without needing to write the final sentence. The room offers you one more choice. A bed, low, wide, blanket already folded at the foot. You sit. You lie back. A soft voice, distant and slow, speaks into the air. You have completed the circuit. Your towel is folded. Your name written in the steam. You have nothing more to do today, except nothing. You smile. Then pull the blanket over your chest. You don't fall asleep immediately. Not this time. You linger for a while, letting your thoughts dissolve like bath salts in warm water. There's no need to remember where you started. No need to plan what comes next. This is the final act of a story told in towels and tiles, in steam and stillness, in whispered policies and fig-scented pauses. You close your eyes, and in the stillness that follows you hear, faintly, the sound of a nation exhaling beside you. You are still, more still than you've ever been. The kind of stillness that isn't absence but arrival. You're not asleep, not yet, but everything around you is holding sleep's hand. The final nap chamber is silent now, but not empty. The walls remember you, the blanket does too, and somewhere nearby a candle burns just long enough to say, "I'll stay awake for a little while longer, until you don't need me to." You lie on your back, eyes closed, breath slow, not because anyone asked you to, not because a voice said, "Now is the time to sleep," but because sleep has arrived gently, without knocking. It knows your name now. From beyond the chamber walls, you imagine the entire bathhouse exhaling, steam curling into ceiling beams, benches cooling like thoughtful stones, the whisper vault going quiet. The poets folding their last metaphors. You picture the Emperor Benequietus reclined in his private chamber, a scroll resting gently on his chest, his fingers tracing a line that reads, "May the laws I wrote with ink be remembered half as long as the ones I whispered in warmth." You imagine that somewhere he is still napping, wrapped in the empire he helped build, one bench at a time, one sigh at a time. You've been part of it now. You've wandered the steam lanes, listened to whispers, folded towels, laughed softly with strangers, forgotten your schedule, remembered your body. You've done the impossible. You've slowed down in a world built for sprinting, and now the room dims around you, not by switch but by decision. The world knows. It's time. The voice returns, so faint it might be your own memory. You are warm. You are wrapped. The Empire has noticed your breath. It asks nothing more. Outside, Rome continues, merchants trade, chariots roll, goats do what goats do. But here, time has stopped pacing. And instead, sits beside you, quietly folding a blanket for your dreams. Let it drift now. Let the story close its own cover. Let the steam, still warm inside you, rise once more, and carry you gently into everything soft you didn't know you needed. End of script. Sweet dreams.